if you can change who you think you are, really and deeply, that is the most profound kind of change there is. So let's talk about how codependency comes up in this. It's really where we can't function from our innate self, and instead we react or we organize our thinking around, quite often, other people, but it could also be substances or processes. Okay. So that's why I like Darlene's answer the most, because most people think of codependency as being all relational, right? Just about relationships with other people. And that's probably the most common, and it's where we'll maybe focus most on this today. But it can also be when we've kind of lost our own sense of self around substances, or even like a process, or like a workaholic, that kind of thing. And so what Darlene shares in her work is that codependency underlies all addiction. Okay. But you can't really treat it until the person becomes abstinent or deals with the obvious addiction that's kind of on top of that. Now, all of you that don't identify as addicted or whatever, I have a couple things to say. Number one, you can be suffering from this and not at all identify as an addict in the least. And the other thing is that I think our culture is moving more and more toward more and more universal addiction, or, escape of feelings, et cetera, all the time. And so this is really, really topical. But to help people understand how this kind of affects, what does like losing yourself mean? What is that? How does that kind of come up?
Well, and this is why I said this is a new way to talk about this, because like you said, people associate it with relationships, and I love that definition of it, to lose yourself or whatever, because it just highlights how this can be something that if you're unaware, right? If this is not something that you've ever thought about, or this is a new thing or whatever, that can be very harmful to you. Because if you don't know that you've lost yourself, that seems like the root source to a lot of problems that you might be experiencing.
Totally.
So I think this is super interesting to kind of talk about it in a way that both covers the relationships and kind of losing yourself, or losing the awareness of who you are within other things as well.
Yeah. And so you actually start to lose kind of where you are emotionally. And, your identity is actually not as solid as you think it is. And again, we talked about identity shifting as this way of like massively transforming yourself. Whether it's you redefining yourself as an athlete, or whether it's you actually becoming okay in your identity as a business owner, or whatever that stuff is, right? For a codependent who's suffering from that, the actual first step is just finding themselves, right? Like, who am I at all? Because we end up losing our navigation of what we value, what matters. And instead, if we are talking about it relationally, if you ask a codependent person, like, what would make you happy? Their go-to answer is often, well, if my partner felt this way, or if they would start behaving differently, or whatever. But you actually lose your own kind of navigation about what really matters to you. You lose your own preference. It almost feels like a sense of decision fatigue, right? Like, well, what do you want to have for dinner? It's like, I don't even know. What do you want to have for dinner? Please tell me what we're having for dinner.
Thanks for tuning into the Rob Scott Show. My name's Sarah, and I'm here with Rob Scott. He's a master level coach. And we're here to we got to start this again. Cut.